Brought to you by the Ramsey Network app. Download today to go further with Ramsey.
Today's Ramsey Network app question is from Mason. And he asks, I would like a reasonable explanation on why you only recommend a 15-year mortgage. Why shouldn't I take a 30-year out and dump extra cash into an ETF earning 10 to 12%? And at the end of 30 years, I'd leverage my house and pay it off. Also have around $700,000 to spend from my investments.
Mason, you're smarter than us. You got us. You got us on this one.
Man, I hadn't thought of that before.
Yeah, way to go, man.
Wow. We'll just change our whole policy. No, so Mason, the biggest goal when it comes to your money, not the biggest, one of them starting out is to become debt-free as soon as possible. And so for a lot of people, this journey of even paying their house off, which is obviously the largest asset most people have, it's going to take around 9 years. And so there is a psychological change that occurs when you know, here is my payment. And even though my intentions are good on a 30-year to either pay it like it's a 15, put what would have been on the mortgage, but now I can invest that money instead. You know, all of those are good intentions. And what we see over and over again is that human behavior can definitely trump what we had planned. And things come up, life happens. And if you think over, 10, 15, 20 years, 30 years, there's a lot of life to happen. So the probability that you would actually do this, right, and do it every single month consistently is probably pretty low, considering we're talking about 30 years. So the idea of doing the 15, I mean, it's just, mathematically it's faster. It forces you into a faster payment plan. And then when people are doing the baby steps and they get to this step, they're paying it off in 9 years versus 15. So you'll be paying it off earlier. Now, some people I know get a 30-year because the rate is better. The payments is more reasonable for their budget, right? There's a lot of different reasons. But again, it's putting systems in place that the rhythm of your money in your life will get you to where you want to go as fast as possible. And that's the 15 over the 30. And what's wild about mortgages too is, even an extra payment, one extra payment on a 30-year mortgage on a $500,000 house at like a 4% interest rate, you pay it off 4 years faster. And you save, it was like, I think close to maybe $60,000 in interest. One extra payment a year. That's on a 30. So if you imagine a 15 and doing that an extra year, or doing 4 extra payments a year, right? Like you can just see the math. It's just, and when you're talking about a house and you're talking about a mortgage and interest and time, it's just big. So when you can like condense it and do it as fast as possible, you're going to be better off.
Well, and I think it's important to call this out. And I've noticed this among like George and I, like we just call them the finance bros, but like the guys with the spreadsheets that they roll out 30 years and they put all these assumptions in there. They've never read Nassim Taleb and they have never experience the pain of when the whole thing collapses, right? When it crashes and when the roller coaster goes way, way, way down, or when you lose your job or your wife gets cancer or when your kid passes away or you have to move or you get laid off or whatever. And I think if your goal in life is to squeeze every last potential gap between an interest payment and a potential earned return on some sort of fund that you're trading, knock your lights out. And we'll be here when you wreck. When you have taken call after call after call of somebody saying, hey, they're taking my mom's house away because she fill in the blank. Or my wife and I have to move to go take care of my dad because he fell and now we have ...
Or my wife wants to stay home and we can't afford the mortgage payments.
If your goal is to always be looking for the spread and try to cover the spread, this isn't what we're trying to sell you. What we're trying to sell you is a total rejection of that way of thinking. We're trying to sell you something that the American household no longer has, and that is peace. That is the ability to sleep at night. I will gladly cash out the gap between a 30-year mortgage and a 15-year mortgage right now, which isn't a ton right this second. In fact, I think the 30-year mortgage rates may be less than the 15-year because they're trying to sell those because they can hold on to them longer. I would gladly sell that over this this imaginary 30-year return I would have on this little bit of money if I constantly did this every month for 30 years and nothing bad ever happened to my family.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
I would gladly trade that gap
For peace.
knowing that no one could ever take my house away, period, ever. And I call it my sleep tax. It's my soul tax. I just walk around knowing you can't take my house.
Yeah.
No matter what happens. My mom gets cancer. My wife passes away. They cannot take my house. And so if that's not what you're into, there's no math problem that we're going to sit down and map it out for you. Right.
Right. Because that's the thing too about paying your mortgage off early, because we hear kind of similar argument. Oh my gosh, why would I pay it off early? Why would I not just, invest that money? Or if I have this money, it's making more, in the market versus my 2% interest rate that I got 10 years ago. Why would I ever unplug something that's making that much to throw at debt that's only like a 2 to 3% interest rates? And it's the exact same thing, because peace and
you can't take my house.
Calmness doesn't show up on a spreadsheet. It just doesn't.
Right.
And we had our money and marriage weekend last weekend here with about 600 couples or so. And there were a lot on baby step 7, which means they've paid off their house. There was a good amount of them. I was kind of surprised when I was asking what baby step everyone was on. There was a good amount of baby step 7. And I was like, oh, wow. And I said, okay, so for those of you that paid off your house, keep your hand up if you regretted it.
0
hands were still up.
Yeah.
Because it's like, no, when you really don't have a mortgage payment, you're not like, dadgummit. And if you are still, you can always borrow back on your equity and go and invest it, right? I mean, like, you can always get back into debt. And because there's something to be said about us as people, our human soul at a very, very deep level rests in a place that does not show up on an Excel sheet. It just doesn't.
Period.
And so
end of story.
We talk more about the person than we do the math on this show, because we really believe in the people. We believe in you. If you're listening or watching, you are the solution to your problems. You are the one that's going to make choices in your life, like empowering who you are as a whole person, not the little financial geek, over here. You as a whole person, as a son, as a daughter, as a husband, as a wife, as a mom, as a dad, as a friend, like all these elements of you. Money is just a part of it. But on this show, it's the thing that ends up being magnified into a lot of our dysfunction, is what we end up seeing. And so you can't forget, you are a person. You are a whole person. And that piece is part of it. It's not always the math.
And you leverage people. You only need to go read Wendell Berry. You only need to go read Nassim Taleb, people who love risk, because I love risk, but the goal of risk, I actually do. I'm kind of a conservative risky, but I love it. The thing that the modern kids that are all into like risk and leverage, I'm going to go, is you can't leverage something that if the risk doesn't pay out, you lose it all, right? And there's no better way to risk when you have a house, when you are your own bank, and when your kids' school is taken care of. Bro, then go to Vegas. Then you can play, right? Then you can start doing these things. But this leverage, there's a fulcrum to leverage. And if your fulcrum is your home, dude, they're going to come take your house. The market doesn't ride bulls forever. They will come take your home. And that just tells me you watch a lot of Instagram and a lot of TikTok, and you know how to use ChatGPT to make some cool Excel algorithms. You don't understand what it's like to sleep in a house that you don't owe money on.
Yep, that's right. Yep,
this is what it is,
totally.
man. They can't take your house away. I'm all about leverage. I'm all about risk. I love it. But I don't risk my wife's house. I just don't.
Yeah.
And when you get that through your mind, then you can play these, well, then I'm going to leverage my house and pay it off, but play that game after you've covered the ground floor. And
I think that's part of the misnomer too of, that the $700,000, that he has, typed out, there's something about also just chasing money to a degree that there is a level of emptiness out there, y'all. Money is not a god. It is not an idol. It will not fulfill you. Like, it's not. But it also will destroy you if you don't have peace around it. So getting yourself in a healthy position mathematically is very smart. That's what we want you to do. But then on top of that, knowing that it has a placement in your life that you're not constantly chasing, because the finish line, Mason, is always going to move. It's always going to move. So contentment is key in this as well.